And then that is one of the contentious issues on the proposed amendments to the election laws there. Let's hear from you on this, Dr. Muiru, because in these proposals, Jubilee seems to be watering down the digital system and putting more water on the manual system of transmission. And Ezra Chiloba, they're asking, so what if, one of these KIMS kits fails to work? What would be the alternative mode of transmission there? What route should the country take on that one?
We are always admonished to always err on the side of caution. Mm-hmm. The whole concept of abundance of caution. Let's remember that whenever we talk about technology, we are not talking about a natural, thing. We are really talking about a tool. So at the very basic level, technology is a tool. It's just like a djembe. And you can, if you have ever worked in a farm, mm-hmm. If you are using a djembe, there are times when a djembe hits a stone and it breaks and that kind of thing. So the best way to look at this whole issue is to look at the weaknesses of technology. The other day in Germany, there were reports that a portal had been identified within their electronic voting system, where people could, evil-minded people could manipulate the vote. Fortunately, it had never occurred, but the opportunity was there for, conspirators to basically, manipulate the German election. Mm-hmm. So what I think they are trying to do in this particular case is to cure that eventuality, so that in the event that technology, doesn't work, either through the transmission process, we are not fully covered by 4G, for instance, or any other, power failure or anything else that could afflict technology. Mm-hmm. Then we would have a backup system where we can always go back and verify. And remember that, the forms are being signed by everyone in the presence of pretty much everyone. So there will be multiple people to verify. Of course, you can enhance the technology through by building what are called verification mechanisms and authentication mechanisms, mm-hmm. in those particular forms that are transmitted. But it is not fail-safe. So you don't want to have to be so reliant on technology that you end up with a single point of failure. So you want a multiplicity, a certain repetition, of options, so that they can triangulate each other. Mm-hmm. The electronic process triangulates the manual process triangulates the
electronic process.
It makes sense, whichever you look at it. Uh-huh. So I think that the challenge is, it would be very nice if we were all engaged in this lawmaking process, so that we go and present our views as members of the public in the event that just ended yesterday, or we use our elected members of parliament to go and deliver their views within legislature, because registration that happens in Parliament is not an illegal process. It's an independent process by itself.
All right. Yeah. Professor Tumba, I think it would be good to look at, this proposal, and the thoughts by Ezra Chiloba. But first, going back to the August 8th election, the mode of transmission then, and the bone of contention on those 11,000 polling stations which are out of 4G, 3G, 4G network. So how different are these current proposals from the mode of transmission, the complementary mode of transmission then, and what impact are they likely to have?
Thank you very much, Michelle. The principal fear in this legislation, mm-hmm. is that one side or the other may interfere with the process in the strongholds of the other, mm-hmm. so that the results from where that particular party comes from, all right, are manually delivered. Mm-hmm. So that there is a claim that this system failed. That's the principal fear. I'm aware that on both sides, that's what they're trying to do.
Right. But isn't a complementary system also meant to be simple, verifiable, and transparent?
Yes. one of the things that we, in all this, the complicating factors are the players in the shadows. It's not the guys, it's not the legally identified and established people sitting on those positions. The players in the shadows are the ones actually that are a problem in this election. I want to use the example of an aeroplane. The technology in an aeroplane has got almost 20,000 variable factors to deal with in order for the autopilot to operate. Here is one we're having that is having less than 10 variables to consider, and we have a problem managing it. In my view, the position should be IBC should rigorously test, pre-test, modify, and make sure that the opportunity for failure is completely minimized. Like in, in air transport, the opportunity for failure is reduced to less than 1%, so that if you have 1,000 flights per day, there is almost no chance of a plane falling off the sky, all right? Now, what is missing in this whole thing from an IBC perspective is the rigor to make sure, you see, we are behaving like we have so little control over this system that it will fail.
But they just recently asked for an additional 3.8 billion shillings to upgrade the KM system, which will be used for transmission of results. And of course, one would expect that it is additional money to ensure that it will be a foolproof, tamper-free system. Particularly
when you are going to have mobile. For example, the areas are not covered by 4G. You provide satellite support to enable those areas to be covered. My personal position on this thing is that there is still fear of the manual transmission system. It appears necessary, but only if the rigor that is required to make sure the electronic system doesn't fail. The electronic system did not fail last time. It was abused. Yeah, that's different from technology failing. You know, technology manipulation, technology interference, it will always fail. But if you let it operate the way it should operate, we will not have that problem.
So are you saying let's go in this without a plan B?
Sorry?
Are you saying let's go in this election without a plan B, trusting very well that the KM's kits will work?
No, plan B must be electronic plan B, not manual plan B. That's my view. In other words, you don't establish a system and then say it is likely to fail before you have shown comprehensively that you have undertaken sufficiently rigorous assessment to ensure that you reduce the chances of failure to a minimum. Now, the manual system, in my opinion, could be there, but in the sense that it may not overturn the results of the principal process of conducting an election, which in this case, all right, the transmission process, which in this case is electronic.
All right, and of course we'll keep an eye on this because this bill will be tabled before Parliament next week. We'll be listening to what various members of Parliament will have to say on that particular one. But the most contentious issue in this bill has been on a commission quorum, which who can announce results in the absence of the chairperson. So here now is Kiambu Senator Kimani Omatangi on the same.
They recommend that the quorum of the commission, decision-making be retained at 5. But also downwards there, they have also proposed that the decision of the commission shall be at least by simple majority of the total members of the commission. And the commission having 7 members then means that a simple majority will be 4. And the provisions of the amendments then were that the decisions of the commission would be taken by at least half of the existing members of the commission. that will still probably bring you to 4, because what we are saying is that if you're 7 and half is 3.5 and there's no half of human being, then you would still end up at 4. Maybe that would revolve around your experiences, if you asked me. But for ease of transaction of maybe your own business and expediting the roles that you have, now that you also acknowledge that decisions binding the commission would be by a simple majority, then which also equals to 4, wouldn't you want to reconsider that even the previous wording still gives you the same, but makes it easier for you to transact business?
All right, so that has been one of the most contentious issues there. We've heard from the IEBC commissioners. They're seeming unanimous on that decision that they do not want, this particular point or this particular amendment to go through, because we've heard from the commissioners yesterday, and they seem to be in agreement that it is important, first of all, for the IEBC chair to have credentials fit to be a judge of the Supreme Court. But on the issue of quorum, Dr. Muiru, what would you say informs this amendment by Jubilee, and do you agree that the quorum should be at least 3?
I'll answer that question, but before I do, let me take a small little moment to say something about technology. Some of the best technologies in existence in the world today are, aerospatial, engineering technologies, and we have the other NASA, National Aeronautic and Space Administration. Yes, in the U.S. And despite the sophistication and the state-of-artfulness of those technologies, guess what? Those technologies do fail. You saw a whole, ship, Columbia, basically disintegrating in space. So it's, even if we throw a lot of money into this technology thing, there is no guarantee that it can work with 100% perfection. The other day, you remember, Malaysian airline, disappeared, out of the blue. So, and we are talking about, airspace or aeronautical or, aircraft engineering, right. Not a simple thing like this one. So, I think, it is important that we recognize that particular fact. Going back to the issue of the quorum, I think what I think may be informing this, there are certain subterranean, undercurrents going on within the IEBC that, some people somewhere know exist. We, the rest of the Kenyan public doesn't know that, there are those, infightings and undercurrents within the IEBC. So we are not really able to judge exactly what is going on. But I think there is a sense in which you can almost see that this particular proposal is trying to, again, try and take care of something that we ourselves cannot see, that's going on within the IEBC itself. I don't know what it is, but if a problem is anticipated, I think it is, it is prudent for the law to take care of it, right, before it actually comes to bite us.
The most important question is, if that actually goes through and quorum is reduced to 3, what impact is it likely to have on the decision-making within the commission and the decision-making that will eventually impact the election we're going to have?
Yeah, I was going to say that if, that is the law, and the law basically reduces the quorum to 4, that will be the decision of the commission. So, there will be no illegality there, because the law will have subscribed or prescribed that quorum for this particular body equals 4. So I don't think that would be a problem. Yeah.
Okay. The question is, what is the current situation? All right, is by 5. The current decision is that it's 5. That is constitutionally prescribed. Now, what demands have called for review of this particular thing? And the demands appear to be completely political. And the party that is presenting this is seeking, knowing what controls, subterranean controls it has in the commission, in terms of among the commissioners, is that if we can change this, then our people have control. All right? Now, my understanding, when I talked earlier, I talked about there are commissioners there whom you never hear anything about. They are basically passengers. And their purpose is entirely to provide a number. Now, this particular change, to use the lawyer's word, is ultra vires, is in bad faith. Because the quorum of 5 did not undermine the election. So if it did not undermine the election, as per the ruling of the Supreme Court, why is this necessary? So the idea is to gain political advantage. The other position is that I doubt if we know the full story, as Dr. said. The story underneath, as I said earlier on, the subterranean players have completely emasculated the internal working of the commission, whereby, for example, even a thing that looks completely factual and straightforward, a way is found to label it and condemn it. As they say in English, give a dog a bad name and hang him.
Right.
So what we are seeing here is political maneuvering. And for purposes of consensus, this is one of the aspects that I wish both teams, NAS and Jubilee, would sit and discuss, and I'm sure they can, chaired by IBC, and find a solution. If you legislate against this, and I want you to think about it after the election. If you legislate this and reduce it to 4, there's going to be a problem in the election.
All right. And of course, even as you comment on that, Dr. Muiru, we've seen the commissioners speak against this particular provision, saying it should be left as is. And we're talking about having a commission that is independent, a commission that, is not visibly shaken by, the wills of these political parties. How is this likely to play out, considering even NASA has boycotted, these particular sittings in the Joint Select Parliamentary Committee, saying they do not want, to be part of the, the discussions on the table. And as Dr. Professor Tumbo says, it is important that these two parties come out and legislate or discuss on this issue important enough.
Let me say this. These are proposals. They are not the actual law. There is still, although there's that particular proposal on the quorum, there is no guarantee that it will end up in the act that will be in the law that will be passed.
Right.
Because they're going to be debating it in the next couple of days, and then I'm sure not just this particular proposal or views in that particular proposal, but other views as well that affect the general law will moderate how the final bill is going to be like. So it's a good thing that these views are actually coming out, and I'm sure they will be taken care of. But whether or not let's look at whether or not the issue of the IBC, the issue of independence of the IBC. On that particular issue, the important thing to note is that IBC becomes independent after its formation, and the laws that are being made now are supposed to operationalize, and facilitate the IEBC further, because even if it is a constitutional body, it cannot just operate without guidelines.
No, I beg to differ on that.
Let's have it finish.
Yeah, so that in itself is an important point to consider. So these laws that are coming up, and any other laws that are going to be coming up, are anticipatory. All laws are made in anticipation. So if you think there is a particular weakness somewhere, you fix it with that particular law. And remember that law-making process is has its own checks and balances, because once a bill has been passed by Parliament and becomes law, it can always be taken to court for a judicial review. So it's not as if all is lost. The judiciary could send it back to Parliament for further amendment if this particular issue of quorum is going to be a big problem.
Professor Tumbo, we need to wind up very briefly.
Yeah, I was in fact going to say, look, IBC did not ask for amendments. It is the one that was in trouble. It is the one that was required to take corrective action. It did not require corrective action. In this particular case, all right, due to the dissatisfaction of Jubilee with the Supreme Court ruling, they decided that they are going to mutilate aspects of the rules and regulations that enable IBC to operate in order to realize their political ends. So the issue that this will be, when it is finally converted into law, to me that doesn't make sense because it's a predominant Jubilee house. This is a foregone conclusion.
Can I say something?
Let me finish that. Now, it was not done. That's why I said it was in bad faith. It was not done in a consultation with IBC, in a consultation with their opponents, in a consultation with the Supreme Court. It was simply a straight, hard-headed position that we want this to enable us to get this. So that kind of, and this is the problem, to pretend that this thing can be neutrally be done for the benefit of IBC so that IBC can be happy.
All right, Dr. Muiru, please, couple your rebuttal to that with your closing comments. My final question being 19 days to the election. What is your assessment of the state of the nation, considering the stand by the IBC currently and the very hardline position still being taken by both NASA and Jubilee?
I think the critical thing for this country is to observe the rule of law. And, if we do not observe the rule of law, then we will have no democracy to speak about. We will have no country, because without laws, then it means that we will end up with chaos. So I'm not sure who wants chaos. Any Kenyan, I am not sure of any Kenyan from wherever. I'm sure all Kenyans want peace and stability. So what we are having is a small little debate over interpretation of laws, over operationalization of the laws, and most importantly, we are having a problem of political culture. We need to develop our political culture to what is called a democratic culture, where we learn to resolve our differences through the legal process and also amicably, without resorting to violence.
Right.
I think that is the main problem that that is before us, and I hope that we can be able to learn from that.
All right, Professor Tumbo, your closing comments, please.
Thank you. Now, I agree largely with what Dr. Muiru has said. The issue of nobody wants violence, nobody wants disorder. The positions that are taken by both sides of the political coalition are quite clear. One side wants results, all right, irrespective of process. The other side is saying process means everything to us. Can we produce a hybrid between those two stances so that we have got a platform that is considered to be the platform of our political culture? And this can only be achieved not through legislation. It can be achieved through, all right, standing on top of the box, through dialogue. And however hard, I'm one of those who advocate that even the most vicious disagreements are nearly always sorted through dialogue.
Right.
So my proposal is that irrespective of the bad faith on both sides, it's important that both of them each swallows their pride for the benefit of the citizen.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for speaking to us this morning. This is our week in review with the political analyst, Professor Oweri Tumbo and Dr. Muiru Ngugi, right here on Morning Express KT. I'm going to take a short commercial break now, but do stay with us. More news making headlines on the other side.